Hello, my name's Niranjan, the host of Master of Your Crafts podcast. Learning from leaders who are continuously inspired, passionate, and driven to align with their soul purpose, sharing their gifts to bring healing to others. The music is composed by Rebecca Everett. Today is episode number 114, where I'll be talking to Nina Concepcion, a Tedx speaker and a CEO and founder of Institute of Conscious Sales. Prior to being an entrepreneur, she became one of the youngest top sales earners in real estate at the age of 22. Over the last decade, she has since supported clients from over 12 different countries in building their business from zero to multiple six figures. Her following has named her the Naked Coach from her new title book, The Naked Coach, a guide to embracing your imperfections in life and business. The conversation with Nina led from a number of interactions that I've had with her on her expertise, her wisdom, and her knowledge that she has garnered over the years. She's motivating, she's driven, and she's a leader who is seeking out to support others on many levels. I trust that you will enjoy this conversation and that you will be able to garner some information for yourself and expand your business and knowledge with what she has to share. Enjoy the conversation and thank you for listening. Hello and welcome to Nina. How are you, Nina?
I'm very well. How are you, my love?
I am well. I'm really excited to have this conversation, not only because you're on the other side of the world, literally, but also it's been a long time since I've been curious enough to delve into a conversation with you in the mastery of your craft. And granted, it's evolved and changed and all that wonderful stuff over time, but you still come at it from a very, very unique place. And I want to delve into that. Would love for you to share as much as you're comfortable, but also be in a space of just you being your delicious you.
Perfect. I'm excited.
So I'm going to start with a really big question.
Yes.
What do you believe about yourself? And does it define who you are?
It is a very big question. I think one of the first things that I mentioned in my book, like I'm sure it's in the introductory chapter, is it's challenging to articulate your purpose, your being, all of who you are in a book, in a paragraph, in a sentence. And I do believe that we're ever evolving.
Yes.
So, my answer right now is more than likely going to change at a different stage of my life. But right now, what do I believe about myself? I believe that I am somebody who cares about making a difference. I believe that I have to sneeze. If I'm making funny faces, that's why I have to sneeze.
That's okay.
Yeah, I believe in someone who wants to make a difference. I believe I'm someone who deeply cares about the people in my life and making sure that they're okay, they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel understood. And I believe about myself that I'm someone who always wants to improve. I always feel like there's something that we can improve on, and not to strive for perfection, but it's like right on the tip of my nose. Oh, excuse me. Oh, I'm so glad that came out. Thank you. Yeah, so I feel that not to strive for perfection and not to feel bad for my mishaps and my mistakes and the challenges that I have, but also understanding that there's always something that we can learn from. There's always ways that we can improve. We can always be more present. We can always be more loving. We can always be more caring. We can always be more understanding.
Mhm.
Always, always. So that's something I believe about myself. Um, and what do I make it mean about my identity? Is that what you said?
Does
Was that
that
the question?
define who you are?
Does that define who I am? Yeah, it's, I think what's interesting is I remember my mentor, he said to me, your ability and an entrepreneur's ability to be able to die and be reborn again is what will determine how successful you become.
Mm.
There are so many metaphorical ego deaths that happen on the
Mhm.
journey of entrepreneurship.
Oh, yes.
And I've unconsciously, as we do, identify with certain things. I remember when I was in real estate, which is where I get a lot of my sales experience from initially, I would identify with being really driven, being successful, owning my home, moving out of home at like 21, buying my own property. And then you also realize that it's not really those things that make you who you are. So whenever I find myself identifying with something, I'm always questioning, but is that really who I am? Is that really something that's necessary to identify as? So I wouldn't say that it necessarily defines my identity. I feel like my identity is constantly evolving.
Mhm.
Um, but I think it's healthy to have that level of discernment. And there, I'm sure that there are plenty of things that I do identify by that I'm conscious or unconscious of.
Yeah.
But I think it's being aware of that and not being tied to those identities and not thinking broader and not having an open mind because of those identities.
Right.
So for me, that's a constant contemplation that I have with myself.
Nice. Nice. It's always such a interesting dialogue and narrative even to explore those opportunities of what is it that's showing up and how can it help me or is it hindering me? And what does that look like? What's that space in between for me to truly, as you said, to a certain degree, peel back all those other layers to become more and more and more and deepen your presence ultimately on this planet.
Mm.
I love that. I love that.
Mhm.
So, what do you, with all of that in mind and all of those peeling back those layers and deepening in who you are or who you are at this moment, what do you believe is your calling or perhaps one of your callings at this moment?
Mm. Well, being, 22 weeks pregnant, I've always known I wanted to be a mum.
Mm.
Um, this is now my second child, so my little girl's already 6. Um, but I also equally know that I'm also here to do something at a business capacity. I'm here to make a difference outside of my family.
Mm.
Um, so, at the moment, I've got my business is the Institute of Conscious Sales, and that's all about heart centered, ethical driven sales. And having an outlet in which I can express a different part of my personality, a different part of my skill set, a different part of who I am is something that I feel for me is really healthy and needed for me. I find that when I get to do that sort of work that I feel called to do, I feel happier, I'm more fulfilled, I'm a much more present, happy, grateful, grounded mother, partner, friend,
Yeah.
even mentor. So I feel like the two biggest callings I have in my life is one to be a mother and also to make an impact with the service that I provide.
Yeah. And that you do with all that you give and share so candidly and so generously, actually, as well. with so many people that I've kind of connected with, and we've had many conversations too related to that as well. So thank you.
You're
What do you
welcome.
think? What are the attributes from granted, yes, the mothering process is nurturing and supportive and creative, whereas the business component is often
Mm,
referred to as a very masculine trait, very structured, very focused, and that kind of stuff. But there's somehow an innate intertwining of both of them.
mhm.
And with that intertwine, what do you think are some of the attributes that connect you to that purpose
In business,
in both?
in both. As many of us know, in spirituality and personal development, there is the masculine energy and the feminine energy, like you said, right?
Mhm.
And I really don't feel it's one or the other. I feel that when we are too much on to one extreme, that's when we become imbalanced. That's
Right.
when it's not healthy.
Mm.
Um, However, I feel like as a mother, being with a partner who can really hold that masculine, I have more space to explore my femininity as a mother because
Mhm.
we have that balance in the co-parenting of bringing up our daughter. So I was actually I sort of talked to a lot of my friends about this because whether my friends are single or in relationships, you know, going deep and talking about your relationships is something that is very common in my life. And one of the things that a lot of strong-minded female entrepreneurs have mentioned to me is the fact that they meet men that aren't able to meet their masculine.
Mm.
Because in order to be good in business, you need to have both.
That's
To
right.
be able to have a heart-centered business, you need to be able to know how to have that direction, to just get shit done,
Mm.
to 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 willfully decide to do something and to exercise discipline.
Right.
And when it comes to the feminine, that's where the connection comes in. That's where the flow comes in. That's where the intuition comes in. And the thing with business is that if you do not have any form of direction, focus, clarity, drive, then it's going to be incredibly difficult to get the momentum and take the action that you need in order for that energy to come back to you. Because the law of the universe is for every giver, there is a
That's
receiver, and
right.
for every receiver, there is a giver. So, in order for that energy to come back financially, there needs to be a consistent level of energy that is put into a certain direction. And that's a big part of where that masculine energy comes in. Also, as an entrepreneur, you are the leader, you are the service provider, you are the person that someone is coming to for support. And if you are not able to lead them, which is very much the masculine energy of I can take care of you, I can lead you, if you're not able to harness that energy, it's very difficult for people to feel like you can help them. And even unconsciously, energetically, they'll feel like, oh, can this person really help me? But then when it comes to being a mother, because it's a partnership of me and my partner, with our little girl and with the next one coming, there's much more room to play with me being in my feminine and my partner being in his masculine. And also at the same time, he also gets to be in his feminine and I get to be in my masculine. But the roles that we play in our relationship, in our dynamic, in our family is that I'm typically that little bit more nurturing than he is. Doesn't mean he's not nurturing. I'm just more nurturing and he is that little bit more structured, that little bit more um, stern than I am. And that is very much in a nutshell the masculine and the feminine.
It is. But it's so interesting to see how your dynamics of it really get played out in the intimacy to a certain degree of you and your partner, but also the intimacy of you and your business, and how it really can be done well from a place of, I want to say surrender, but also from a place of true understanding of who are we talking to here? Who are we interacting with? Who's the conversation with? What does that narrative and dialogue look like? Because perhaps the narrative I've seen over the last at least 4 or 5 years, if not more than that, the feminine in business drops all softness. And by softness, I don't mean they don't care, but in the same token, just because we're in the masculine way doesn't mean we need to be a pushover either. So striding that balance, I think, is really important and really key, bless you, in having that unfold. And like I said, I think you do that really well in looking at what those attributes are and being really transparent and honest to have those conversations. And you've obviously created a beautiful circle around you to be able to do that. So congratulations for that.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think it is important to remember that it has been a journey, right? I went from being incredibly masculine in real estate to finding spirituality and going completely the other way, leaving real estate, becoming a life coach, moving to Bali, going to the jungle, working with plant medicine, dressing like a hippie. Like I've gone to the other extreme, and then it was about coming to a center for me. Like, how can I still exercise that part of myself, the masculine part of myself, but also the feminine side of myself, and how can I integrate those two things together? And when it comes to relationships as well, when I've had previous partners and they weren't able to meet me in my masculine will step up and say, well, if you're not able to do this, then I will. And one, I needed to find someone who could meet me at that level of masculinity. But two, I also needed to give him the space and the opportunity to step into that.
That's right.
Because there's a difference between, oh, I'm just not going to give you a chance to be in a masculine. I'm constantly going to be in my masculine. But then there's also being able to pay attention and to observe, are they stepping up in the way that you need them to step up?
In the same token, us as women need to cut ourselves a little bit more slack. We've been born and raised in this patriarchal society that is ingrained within us since we were born, that this is how the world works. And the world really doesn't teach us how to be assertive feminine. Rather, it just teaches you to be aggressive, period.
You can be masculine without being aggressive. Like they don't need to go hand in hand. And I think that's a big perception, similar to sales, right? A lot of people think sales needs to be manipulative and pushy and disingenuous, but it doesn't have to be that way.
But majority, I don't know about you, but for me, majority of my experiences in the world that we live in, growing up as a young adult, as a child, into adulthood, it's very patriarchal and very in a space of structure, order, very little softness and forgiveness and that kind of space. Maybe it was just the people who I interacted with, my bosses, my peers, and those people, perhaps. But it seemed to be more of that and less of those who really understood. That's my experience.
Yeah. I feel like there's a really amazing quote by, I think it's by the Buddha. And this also ties into identity. I'm not who I think I am. I'm not who you think I am. I am who I think you think I am. And it's this whole everything is just perception.
Ultimately.
And growing up, I think that my perception and view of the world was definitely that it was a lot more, dominant, male driven, I guess controlling in a way. And as I've made a conscious decision about how I want to live my life and the people that I choose to have in my life and have healthy boundaries with people and decide to let people go when it's no longer in alignment, I found that the more I progress in this timeline of my life, the more I actually find more people that have the same views as me, people who are, heart-centered and that care, and that even the business owners, they genuinely want to make a difference. They've got a deep spiritual backing. They believe in humanity and making a difference, not just making money.
Yeah, I agree. But it's a ride to get there.
Oh, absolutely.
I guess
A
that's what I'm
choice.
getting at. It's a ride to get there. And yeah, and it's through making some really interesting and difficult decisions to get there, which is why I commend you for your path and your journey of what you're doing right now and where you're at right now, because it isn't easy. We all know that. Regardless of what gender you want to identify as and how you want to move through the world, it's still a choice, regardless of whether both choices are difficult and difficult.
Exactly.
We still have a choice. So this is the ride we get to play on. So I think that's the fun. That's supposed to be the fun part, even though it doesn't look like fun.
It's scary, it's frustrating, it's fun, it's everything.
All of it in between.
Yeah.
And with all of that, and as you build it, and you did allude to this a little bit earlier in terms of your intentions, the intentions with all that you've built, earned, learned, grown, and created for yourself with your own intention. Yes, you have clients that come with their intentions and you want to support them, empower them, and all those beautiful things. But what's ultimately your intention with this craft?
With my craft of my purpose and my business.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Before I had the level of clarity that I have in my business now, 11, 12 years into running a coaching business, when I think back to when I initially started compared to how I feel now, it's the same. And I think that, and I hear it from my clients all the time, but I just want to have clarity. I just want to know who exactly I'm talking to. I want to know my niche. I want to know, um, I want clarity in who I am and my value and my niche. But if you're coming from a place of, I want to make a difference and who can I make a difference for? Eventually you figure it out. Eventually you get that clarity. And one of my quotes, which is like a mantra in my coaching container, is action precedes confidence. You build your confidence by taking more action. You cannot actually build confidence, real confidence, without taking action and witnessing yourself in the action of it.
Right.
And I remember all I wanted to do was I just wanted to make a difference. It was actually, I talk about this in my book. So I was in real estate and I moved out of home. I was on my way to buying a second property. I was on my way to opening up an office with my team leader in real estate. I was 21 at the time. And I remember I went to a personal development event. This is back in 2012. And back then, like there was like 100 people in the room, and I was one of the youngest people in the room. And Brendan Bouchard was there. And back then, no one knew who he was. I remember I would talk to everyone about him, and no one knew who he was. And I remember sitting there in the audience, crying, furiously writing, and realizing that as much as I've loved real estate, I'm here to make a bigger difference. I can see myself being a speaker and an author and a coach. And this was back 12 years ago. No, yeah, 12 years ago. And I didn't even know about the coaching industry. Like it was still relatively new back then. People still didn't really know what it was. When people would find out I'm a coach, they're like, well, what do you actually do? Is that a real job? Like this is literally, it was relatively new back then. And over the last 12 years, that's really what I've been doing. I've been coaching, I've been speaking, I've got my book. But I didn't like my business has changed, my message has changed, even the people who I work with has changed. But at its core, I remember sitting there listening to Brendan and being so inspired that I could change my life. And I remember thinking to myself, I want to impact people the way that Brendan's impacted me.
Mm. Wow.
And I think sometimes, especially in the world that we currently live in, with the social media information age that we live in, it's so easy to say, I want millions of followers. I want thousands of people in my room. I want hundreds and thousands of clients. There's always this perpetual expectation to do better, be better, like continually improve. And that's very much driven in the personal development world, just constant improvement. At the same time, I've had to really just come back to, if I can just impact one person when I get up and speak, when I share something, even in the process of writing my book, I just thought to myself, if I can just help one person, then I've done a good job.
Yeah. And that's what invites one to continue to take action. Could you take the pressure off? Yeah. So the core intention behind all that you've learned, all that you have peeled back and then added on and peeled back and added on and done that dance as we
Yeah.
continue to do, is to truly witness the shift in others.
Mm. There's something so powerful about witnessing someone and having a realization that you can live a better life, that you can make a bigger difference. And that's exactly what Brendan did on that day for me. And he, he's obviously massive. Like, it's very hard to get in touch with Brendan. And I was fortunate enough to get a photo with him on that day. Because again, it was such a small, there was 100 people in the room. I just went up and had a photo with him. But I've contacted his team. I still have him on social media, but Brendan has no idea what I've done with my life and with my business because I saw him speak that one day. And I've seen him speak since then, but that was the pivotal point for me. And there's something really special about, I think Maya Angelou says, you'll never really know the extent of the impact that you made. Like sometimes I'll run into someone that I haven't seen in years and they'll say, you know, that thing that you said to me 5 years ago, I changed my life and now I'm doing this. And I was like, what did I say? Half the time I don't even remember what I said. But it made an impact for them. And they didn't tell me up until that moment. And I might have never known. But the fact that I was able to do that, a lot of the time we don't know the impact and the difference that we make. Which is a big reason why I'm such a, like when it comes to my partner, my daughter, like my really close friends, a lot of the time with my parents when I have patience with them, because that's always an ongoing challenging relationship. But particularly with like my family and my friends, I make a mental note to constantly affirm to them the impact that they're making in my life. Because as a society, we just don't do it very often.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And perhaps, as you said, as a society that has been positioned as ego tripping. That beautiful word ego comes in to this conversation again of saying, well, if I say that, and depending on how one receives it, they're going to be put on a pedestal and received and receive themselves that way. but also the other person too. So while I hear you loud and clear, and I completely agree, but I'm also being devil's advocate in not only my own journey in this process, but witnessing others doing this as well. That they're not going to see anything because she's just going to think she's the bee's knees, right? Like she's going to be, well, no, what if it's a silent, a quiet whisper of strength, a little more nudge of encouragement. It's it's got this tinge of not really being available or accessible or talked about, accepted. That's the word I'm looking for.
Mm,
But that was in the past. I'm highlighting the contrasts because right now in your world and in my world, it's a very prevalent thing. And I echo you 100% of we really don't know how much we influence people. And sometimes it's not even by what we say.
absolutely. Words are only a very small percentage of communication.
That's right. That's right. So it's super interesting. It's super interesting how that happens. And then after the
Mm.
fact, we sit there and go, what did I say? Yeah, it's very cool. So what's next for Nina?
This year, my focus is really having a healthy, enjoyable, um, natural birth with Lily. Um, I labored naturally to 8 centimeters, and then she turned breech, and then we had to have an emergency cesarean. So having a VBAC, so it's called vaginal birth after cesarean, is something that is mentally challenging to wrap my head around.
Mm.
Um, but it's something that I ideally would like to experience, and I would like to ex to experience that full spectrum of
Right.
birth and being a mother. I have still done work around, but whatever happens, happens. I so
Yeah.
understand, especially after having Lily, that anything can happen. Like you can go in with the perfect plan, but just like anything, not everything goes according to plan.
Mm.
Um, but that is how I would like it to go, and really focusing on what I need to do from my mindset, what I need to do within my body, what I need to do with my energy to be able to give myself the best experience and the baby the best experience possible. And also, I was talking to one of my best friends about this. When I first had Lily, I still wasn't making a full-time income in my business. Like, even though I've been coaching now for coming up to 12 years, it took me 7 years to build my business to a full-time income. So when we talk about, the struggle and the challenge
Right.
and the ride, like it
Right.
definitely has not been a smooth, easy ride for me, particularly when it comes to business. Um, and when I was pregnant with Lily and when I first had Lily, I was still trying to get my business off the ground. I was having an identity crisis of I don't even know if I want my business anymore. It's been 7 years. It's so hard. Why am I still not making a full-time income? And that was a really challenging time just within myself. And then when you're pregnant, I feel like it really forces you to drop into your feminine when you're pregnant.
Mm.
And I was experiencing all of these emotions, questioning all of these things about myself. And one of the things that I struggled with was, I'm someone who is such an independent person. Like me and my partner as individuals, we're incredibly independent. We love time to ourselves. We love time with our friends. We love time with each other, but we're not the sort of couple that want to be with each other all the time. Like we both like things and enjoy things outside of what we would enjoy together.
Mm.
And with all of that in mind, yeah, the biggest challenge for me was having someone so dependent on me when I was so used to being able to do things for myself. Like even having the cesarean, it was hard to even get out of bed. Like I needed help getting out of bed. I needed help carrying things. There was such a level of dependency on me not being able to do things on myself, but also having this baby who needed to constantly have my attention and needed to feed.
Yeah.
And it was a challenge of, well, then am I just a mother now? And not that there's anything wrong with that. I know that there are plenty, like I have some friends that just want to be a mother, they want to be a full-time mother. And if that's something that they truly want for themselves, I love that for them. Like I'm glad that they're honoring themselves, but that's not me. And that's why I was saying that for me, that fulfillment comes from being able to have my family, but also being able to express something where I feel like I'm being called, and provide my service in that way. And that has been in my business. But I feel like with all of that going on, with the identity crisis that I was having, I feel like there the majority of when Lily was in her first year and a half, a lot of the time, my mindset was, what do I need to do now to really make a difference and make a full-time income in my business so that I can be more present for my family, so that I can be more available for my family, so that I don't have to go and work in a job and have to leave 10, 12 hours a day and then come back and have 2 hours with my family 5 days a week. And that was a big focus for me. But I feel like now, having a second child, I'd really just love to bath in the presence of having a newborn baby, because as much as I loved having Lily, like I remember moments of looking at her and she was laughing and I'm crying because of how beautiful she is. I feel like we said at the start of this interview, we can always be more present. We can always be more aware. And for me, having a baby the second time around, especially because I'm good after two, I'm pretty sure I'm done. So I'm like, okay, how can I just really appreciate each moment just that little bit more, just that lot more? Because I've seen how fast Lily grows up, and I know all parents say this, but it's probably going to be the last newborn baby that I have. So really immersing, bathing, marinating in that experience, just that little bit more.
Yeah, beautiful. So it's all hands on deck until baby arrives, and even after that, a little bit more, just to relish the opportunity that you have.
Yeah. And I still care about my business. I still care about my clients. I still want to make an impact. Um, it's just not the forefront of my priorities. My health, baby, my family is going to come first, especially because I think, like we discussed before hitting record, was the fact that I had a miscarriage before falling pregnant this time around. And it was also just that reminder that you do need to slow down when you're pregnant. You do need to take care of your body. And that's something that is in my conscious awareness as I go through this the second time around.
Yeah, yeah. And to, like I said, to relish relish the gift that you get. Relish the gift that you get.
Yeah.
Because perhaps the full spectrum of everything, regardless of what our why is in our business, to serve others or to support others, to empower others, be it your business and me, even in my own business. We do that so we can get to have beautiful relationships, so we can relish the time with beautiful Lily, and so we can get to do all of those pieces because we have that.
Lily actually asked me, she's just turned 6. She turned 6 like a week or two ago. But she asked, she's so smart. But she asked me, we were sitting in the living room a few days ago, and she said, Mum, what are you most proud of in your life? And I said, oh, darling, there's two major things that I'm most proud of. And it makes me emotional thinking about it.
Mhm.
But like Gaz, my partner, was like, you, Lily. And I'm like, yeah, sweetheart, like you and
Mhm.
Daddy. Like, having you guys is something I'm really proud of.
Yeah.
And the other thing is finally making a full-time income in my business, because it was such a struggle for such a long time.
Right.
But I also know that I have the availability and the presence and the time to spend literally as much time with my family as I want to, because I've created that life to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But it's ultimately, it all comes back to the home, right? Ultimately, that's what it is, I believe.
Yeah.
So granted, we're the ones in control of our own business. Our why is a little bit different. And maybe the why is, I'm going to go for a 9-to-5 job and get somebody else to pay me my days. And that's a different why. But ultimately, they all lead back to the home, to your own heart. And I honor you for that, ultimately, because being an entrepreneur, I know the slog. But I equally know the rewards. So it's a gift in itself to be able to travel that road. So, but for you to be able to really relish, enjoy, and be nourished as you nourish that beautiful little being that you're going to be bringing into this planet. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
Yeah, I'm incredibly grateful. And, like you said, at the same time, I know how much work I've put in. I know the blood, sweat, and tears, the persistence that I've had to push through to get to where I am now. And that's why with my clients, excuse me, with my clients, if when they're in a position that they don't want to be in, like, I'm just reminding them, like, you can change it if you want to, but you need to persist. You're going to get knocked down, but you need to keep getting up. And yeah, it is a challenge, but if it's something that you really want, you need to keep working at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Say no more. Nina, thank you for sharing all that you have. The beautiful pieces as well as the vulnerable pieces and all the bits in between. Thank you for sharing your gift with me and with those who are listening, but also with the wider world there, because you've written a book and you're available and you're accessible, at least for a short while, but you've put a system in place to be accessible. So thank you for sharing today on this conversation. I appreciate you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
I'm Naranjan, and you've been listening to Master of Your Crafts podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review, and join me next week for another episode. Thank you for listening.